Aloha mai kako, and welcome back to another book review. I will be your reviewer, Mama Kitty, and today we are going to be reviewing the first book in the Silo trilogy, Wool, by Hugh Howey. Here is the synopsis of the book according to Goodreads. This is the story of mankind clawing for survival, of mankind on the edge. The world outside has grown unkind, and the view of it limited, talk of it forbidden. But there are always those who hope, who dream. These are the dangerous people, the residents, who infect others with their optimism. Their punishment is simple. They are given the thing they profess to want. They are allowed outside. So, this book is broken up into 5 sections. My understanding is that Howey had originally published this in those 5 separate sections as sort of like small little novellas, and then due to audience demand, they were condensed down into one large novel. Each section has its own narrator, and then they're all sort of paced differently, and so a couple of them feel a little more abrupt than others, a few of them feel really slow, and then the last couple are sort of this inevitable rock slide that really takes you on this sort of journey that Howey really cleverly sort of spins together to have you sort of guessing throughout the story, while also the right answer is sort of right there behind your head the whole time. Again, the first couple of sections are all narrated by different people. So the first section has its own narrator, second section, etc. I believe that happens for the first 3 or 4 sections, and then the last 1 or 2 sections alternates narrator every other chapter or so that you kind of get this point of view of all of these different characters and all of these different locations to see the story of what's happening everywhere all at once sort of thing. Howey has this mastery of tone that he uses not only in all of the different sections, but then when he switches later in the story, it's this very clear tonal shift each chapter that he introduces a new character or has the old character speaking or whatever. And not only does it make it very, very clear which character is speaking and when, but also the changes in feel in like your environment, and then the way that these characters interact with other characters happening around them. For example, in one section, we can very clearly see that that particular speaker, if you will, has very specific relations with, the characters around them. And then when we switch later on in the book to another character and view these same side characters through their eyes, it's a completely different feeling, and a different lens, if you will. Not only, though, are the tones different, that, as I said earlier, there are different pacing throughout each section, each chapter. And at first, I was very frustrated with the pacing of one of the sections. It was very slow. I had a hard time getting through it. But in hindsight, became very clear to me that this was intentional. And it's something that I can really, really appreciate. It really felt like Howey had the term show, don't tell on lock, and that he really was able to not only take the character through, not only take the readers through these characters' minds, but also really demonstrate to the reader the pacing for the characters. You know what I mean? In one particular case, I feel like this isn't much of a spoiler. The characters are having to traverse through the silo up and down, and that the section is a little bit on the slower side. But in hindsight, it's just like you can get that feeling of having to trudge down hundreds of flights of stairs to get to this person that you're meeting, and then to have to trudge your way back up said stairs. And I don't know how they did it, honestly, because these characters are sort of in their, I think they said they're in their 60s. Maybe they said 50s. I'm pretty sure they said 60s. My, 28-year-old needs could never, so props to them. But basically, the breakdown of these sections is that the first section is very abrupt and sudden, and it really sort of shows us just how quickly conspiracies and lives can just completely get out of hand. The next section is the really sort of slow and easygoing section. It really kind of leans into the idea of how, even if people are trapped in these kinds of environments, that real connections are possible, and that they make these connections of love and loss and betrayal, and just, they're still living, breathing human beings. They just happen to be trapped inside a silo. Not only that, it also really demonstrates, at least in my opinion, just how life looks like from people who choose to mind their own business, who don't get into the conspiracies that may or may not be happening around them, right? The idea of this story is that if you say you want to go outside, you go outside. And so this particular section is looking at well, why would anybody really want to go outside? We have a place to live and we're living, why? And then they're sort of answered, I think, too, a little later on. Now, in regards to what I said about showing real human connection, I want to preface this by saying that I don't really read a lot of sci-fi, and I definitely don't read a lot of post-apocalyptic novels. And so I'm not saying that that sort of thing isn't common in these kinds of stories. All of the TV shows, all of the TV shows I've seen that have this sort of similar plotline, TV shows or movies or whatever, there is, that sort of romantic aspect, but that tends to be sort of the more specific subplot, right? That there's this underlying romance between these two characters that could never work out because it's the kind of story that it is, right? But there is always something to remind us that these characters are human, right? And in Howey's case, it just feels like he had such a beautiful way of demonstrating it so naturally. And I think that's something that I really, really appreciated. The other sections of the novels are all the build up to and the aftermath of the climax. And it's all done very, very expertly, I would say, without giving away too much information, while giving away just enough for the reader to feel like they know exactly what's going to happen, but then hopefully they don't actually. I would say that one of Howey's other really great skills is the art of misdirection, right? I was pretty sure I had the whole novel figured out about halfway through, and boy, did I not. I did, but I didn't. You know what I mean? Where it's like you kind of get the idea of what's going to happen, but you're not sure of the details. You're not sure how it's going to end up working out in the end, that sort of thing. And he is just really great at peppering in these little clues in the different sections that, oh, the reader knows this information, but this character doesn't know that information. So does the reader knowing this information help that character in any way, or helps the reader as far as that character figuring out what they're trying to figure out? In my case, it didn't really help out, but for someone who is perhaps a little more Sherlocky, maybe perhaps they would have pieced it together faster than I did. Which, as it goes, these kinds of things are all subject, right, to everybody's own different reading experiences. But in my particular case, I would say that he gave us just enough information to allow us to think we had guessed the ending, to have guessed the twist, to have guessed what the climax was going to be. And then when we got there, it was not what we thought it was going to be, and that was super exciting. I think that Howey did just a most beautiful job at world building and developing these characters beyond the sort of post-apocalyptic stereotypes. I was really appreciative of how different it felt to other post-apocalyptic stories that I may or may not have read, which again, is not many. But I would absolutely recommend this to anybody who likes those kinds of stories of people stuck somewhere and having to either break out of it and come to terms with the truth that has been buried by their society. And then, what happens after that? The story is fun, the characters are interesting, the intrigue is enthralling, and the ending just has everything you could possibly want. I am currently reading the second book, which is called Shift. I'm almost done with that, so I will be reviewing that for next week. For me, this book was a 5 out of 5 stars. I cried, I laughed, I gasped, I screamed, "Oh my God!" and texted my best friend in all caps because he was reading it with me, and so we were, sharing our experiences as we went through it. And it's definitely one of those novels that I think if you like the genre, you're gonna like the book, kind of thing. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to know when that Shift video comes out. But also, leave a comment if you guys want me to look at the differences between the TV show that just recently came out on Apple TV and the book itself. It's definitely something I've been considering, doing a sort of frame-by-frame analysis of these two different mediums after I saw a clip of it on TikTok and wasn't particularly impressed with what I saw adaption-wise. So, catch me next time when we review Shift, the second book in the Silo series by Hugh Howey. You can also catch me on Twitch if you'd like to come chat with me in person and have any book recommendations you'd like to give me or you'd like me to give you. Have a tea-filled day, and thank you so much for watching.